Hey, all right, I'm going to tell you something. This is the third time I am doing this, and I promise you we're going to get through this regardless. If the phone rings, I'm not picking it up. They can just ring through, okay? If it rings and you hear it, we're not going to worry about it because this is too important. This is Steph's world. Um, and I'm pretty sure it's part two, chapter Spiritual Foundations, chapter 52. Now, I hope you watched the first one, okay? I'll probably put it back out there again, and then we'll put this one out. So they'll be right next to each other, but you need to watch it so you know what happened. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Here's how my spiritual view of life is. This is today's spiritual view of life. Years ago, I had no spiritual view at all. I couldn't see anything but black. That's all I saw was black. I did my job. I even went to college. My children were everything to me. And sometimes I honestly feel they were the only thing that kept me alive. But I'm going to talk about something really important right now that you need to know about. I believe I like to look at life this way, like I'm climbing my ladder. Okay, my ladder of life. Now, each rung that I'm climbing on has something special I'm either going to learn or that's going to happen in my life. It's going to be something important. Okay? Each one of these rungs. Alright? Now I might sit on a rung for a while. Doesn't mean I'm not growing or I'm not moving on. It just means that I'm there and I'm a little comfortable and I don't have much I'm learning at the moment, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to move up to the next rung here pretty quick. So there were times in my life when I didn't move up that ladder real fast. Now I'm moving up the ladder real fast. Okay? I mean really fast. I really do. Okay, now I want to move on with this quickly, but yet not too quickly. You need to know the horrendous, well, I don't want to put it that way. Here's something else that I truly believe in. Every human being makes their own choices about everything. Here's the sad thing. When I hear somebody say, but I had no choice. Yes, you do. But maybe you didn't know what those choices were. Maybe you didn't know who to call for options. And in today's world, it is a lot easier to develop some choices, maybe better choices. But on the other hand, I don't see that happening. But I'm not going to talk about today's world. I'm going to talk about 40 years ago. And let me tell you something. 40 years ago was a whole different place on this planet than it is today. And a lot of you weren't even born yet. Okay? A lot of you weren't even around yet. In the last one, part one, I talked about my child that I had. His father was a wonderful black man that he and I knew each other for about a year. He watched me go through this pregnancy, but here's the sad part. I never told him that I was carrying his child. Now don't get mad at me. Don't get upset at me for this. I was young. I was 19 years old. I got real sick too while I carried the baby. And that scared me. Not for me, for my child. I was worried about that baby. Because the doctors kept saying, yeah, it'll be all right. The baby will be all right. You see, back then, they didn't do sonograms. The doctors always knew, though. They always knew, a baby doctor always knew from the heartbeat, okay? Boys' heartbeats were always much faster than girls' heartbeats are. Supposedly. I guess that's the way it worked. Anyway, truthfully, with all three of my children, all the doctors I had called it right. Every single one. And I should have known on my youngest one, my daughter, because I didn't gain anywhere near the amount of weight that I gained with the boys. Now, I was a teeny tiny little girl. And I lost a whole bunch of babies in my life. A whole bunch. Ignore that. I do. But I had 3 children. I gave birth to 3 live children. Now my daughter was my youngest, and I almost lost her. That was a touch and go situation. I bled. I called the doctor up. I had to take it easy, and I had a little boy running around that I had to chase after. And we had to talk to that little boy and teach him that, well, mommy isn't feeling good right now. And when I got bigger, we were able to tell him that there was a baby in there, that a little baby was going to be coming. And he was all excited. But that's a different ladder, or a different ring on the ladder. We haven't even gotten there yet. Okay, let's get back to this one. This is their older brother. Okay? I had 3 children. That's the way life is. Okay? Now, my family, when we have children, they're our blood. That's it. They're our blood. Doesn't matter about anything, about who their daddy is or what. He could be the worst person in the world. He could be a convict. We don't care. That child is our blood, period. And we do have several little babies in our family. We do have convicts for parents. Okay? Not on our side, but on the other side of their family. So, that does happen. But we love our nieces, our nephews, our grandchildren. We love them all because they are our blood. They're part of all of us. And that was the way I was raised. I used to hear blood is blood all the time growing up. I heard it from my grandma, my dad's mother. She lived to be she was born in 1900. She lived to be 103 years old. I used to take my grandchildren to go visit her. Got off off of it again. We'll talk about that sometime, because then I can tell you about the angels. Okay? But we're going to talk about another angel right now. Now, I think I mentioned in the other one that my dad was real big on where blood is blood, and we want you to bring that baby home, blah, blah, blah. And I already told him, look, Dad, I love my baby already, and I can't let him go, and he's coming home with me, and that was it. Okay? So I took him home to Chicago. And my mother saw him, and when she saw him, she said, oh my goodness, we got a dark baby like me. How about that? And as a matter of fact, his skin tone was about pretty darn close to hers. She was actually darker. But he darkened up as time went on. But she was real happy right then, because she had a grandchild, a grandson, who was dark skinned like her. And I thought, wow, that is really cool. I was very happy about that because, I knew one of these days I was going to tell him who his daddy was, but at the moment, they didn't care. Remember what I said? The only thing they cared about was their own blood. Now, sometimes that's not good, That's the way this family is, all right? But you have to remember that we need to care about the other people involved too. We need to have some caring for them. Trouble was, they didn't always do that. And right now, I'm not trying to talk about that. Right now, let's talk about climbing this ladder. Okay? Now, with each rung that we put our foot on, we're going to pretend that we're going to get something out of that, okay? It could be good, it could be bad, it could be ugly, but we're going to get something out of it, okay? Now, I don't know what that might be. When I step on that new rung, I may have a new challenge that I'm going to have to deal with, okay? I don't know what those challenges are. I can't tell you my future, but I know that every time, as each day goes by, I climb that ladder. I climb it, and I climbed it back then. And I started climbing that ladder as soon as I had the process of thinking, to be honest with you. That was when I was climbing that ladder, and I'd say that was about a year, possibly 2 years old. Okay? I can remember back pretty far. Okay. Now, we'll talk more about the ladder pretty soon, but right now let's talk about this. So, I got the child home and everybody was really happy, and there's 6 of us kids, and I'm the oldest. And my youngest sister, when I brought my son home, she was probably about 8 years old, something like that. Almost 9, yeah. And so she was too young to babysit or anything, but she was all excited because she was an aunt, All the kids were excited. My brothers, my sisters, everybody was excited because this was a new baby in the family. And they loved him. They loved him. Not as much as me, because I'm his mother, but they loved him. Okay, so the great news is my mother found me a job. In fact, she had it all set up before I ever got up there. It was at a factory where she was a supervisor. Now, my mother didn't have to work but a couple of years of her life. For the most part, she was a housewife at home. A lot of women back in the 50s and the 60s, that's the way life was. Okay? They didn't go to work. Now, the reason she ended up having to get a job was my father had lost a job that he had, and he was working as a part-time school teacher, and just to get him by, and he still had all these kids at home. Okay, and then on top of all that, he tells his oldest grown-up daughter to bring her new baby home. So now they've got a seventh child. Now that's the way my mother's looking at it. Okay, I want you to remember this. That's how my mother's looking at it. Good Lord, I got 6 kids and a new baby. Okay, so a month after I moved there, I found a beat up beater car. I mean, it was so bad. Man, it's a good thing that they put controls on that in most states. Now you come down here to Georgia, there's no inspections here. Oh man, oh God, goodness gracious. Early in the morning, if you're driving like to a job or something, you find out about all the cars that are, with the fumes. Oh, it's something else. It brings me back, let me tell you, to the old days. But in most of the states, they do inspections. You're not allowed to have cars that have fumes blowing out the tailpipes. Well, my car did, and it was beat up. It was an old station wagon. And one of the reasons I wanted an old beat up station wagon, didn't want it beat up, but I wanted the station wagon, was so I could carry my child's things around easier. I thought it would make life easier for us, for him and me. Okay? That's why. So, of course, I never thought about how long it might last. But how old was I? I wasn't even, I think I turned 20 shortly after I got up there, but I was pretty darn young. I was 19 when I had my son. In the end of July, he turns 40 years old. So that was 40 years ago. How about that? Kind of hard to believe, isn't it? Okay, so the family's happy, I'm happy, hallelujah, we got a new baby in the family. Everything seemed to be okay until about a month after I was there, my mother said, okay, well, you have a job now, you got a car, it's time for you and your little one to move out. And I was thinking in my head, well, I thought you guys were going to help me. And, I was willing to pay rent and stuff, so in fact, I think I did pay rent for that month, actually, but it never occurred to me that my mother would think of help as 1 month, okay? Well, I did find a pretty cheap apartment, and it was a cute little thing, actually. It was a very sweet little apartment. They called it a garden apartment. Part of it was below ground, okay? And then part of it was above ground. So probably up to my neck is where we actually had windows that we could look out of. Okay, so he had a crib. We moved everything over there. We got it all set up. We had our own little house. People gave me furniture. Some of my old friends were back in the picture again, and I even, as the days went on, I even found 2 boyfriends. How about that? Yeah, 2. I guess I wanted a choice. I don't know how that happened, it just did. Okay? Some things are meant to be. They're just meant to be. And there's a reason for that. Remember I said we can choose. We should never say things like, well, I had no choice. That's ridiculous. We have a choice for anything. It may not be a choice you might like, but you have a choice. So when somebody says that to me, I say, yeah, you do. I know darn well there are plenty of options out there for any problem, for anything that happens in a person's life. I believe that I think there are many choices. That is my belief. That is what I have learned in my life now. And believe me, I've had one heck of a life. And that's why I'm telling you about it. So listen carefully. Okay, so I'm still climbing this ladder and I'm learning my lessons. And sometimes we relearn some of those rungs are to reteach us all over again things that we forgot about. Okay? And sometimes they're things that they're very important for us to learn. And sometimes we have to learn them 3 or 4 times before they finally click. Oh, okay. They've said that before and it never worked out. Okay? So anyway, everything seemed to be going good, but I realized that my one job wasn't going to cut it. So I talked to my mother about it, and she was working 2 jobs too. So she suggested that I try to get on at this other place that she was working at. It was a drugstore. It meant I would work till 9 o'clock at night. I'd go over there at about, 5 o'clock and work for 4 hours a night. So I could get in like 4 days a week, and that was 16 hours a week, and then I don't remember how much I got, but at least it was extra money to help pay for those bills, the normal bills that people had to pay just to live, okay? And back then, life, we didn't even realize how good we had it, gas didn't cost that much, nothing costs like it does today. It's called inflation, okay? Alright, so I thanked my mother. I was very grateful to her for what she did for me. Very, very grateful. My mother was kind of a tough cookie. I don't know how else to put it. She was just a tough cookie. It was hard to get through to her heart. Very hard. She had had a really tough childhood. And I'm not going to get into that. That's in my book. If you ever read any of my stuff, you'll read about it and why it was like that. Okay. But she did love her children. Believe me, she loved her children. But she wanted her children to be strong. She really did. That was one of her big things. She really wanted us to be strong. And one of her favorite things was, you gotta learn to sink or swim. That's exactly how she'd say it to us. You have to learn to sink or swim. Now, guess what? I never, ever told my children that. I don't think any of my brothers and sisters told their children that either. The ones that had them or kept them. Let's put it that way. Um, the boys are kind of strange. You gotta understand that. And then I have one sister that was unable. She wanted children so bad. And it's sad she was unable to have any. But she has lots of nieces and nephews, and that made it good for her. Okay, so I'm busy climbing, and with each rung I'm on, I got my little papoose on the back here, because he's too little to be climbing yet, okay? So me and my papoose are climbing away. Now, he's not learning anything yet. He's learning about the fact that he's got a mommy, but he also has a babysitter that he spends a lot of time with. Now, when I got the second job, my brothers and sisters were allowed to help out and babysit, and I would pay them. That would give them some money. I would pay them some money for doing it. Well, something happened right before that Christmas that I can't tell you what it was, but my mother came to me and said, okay, your brothers and sisters are not going to babysit for you, ever. Not ever. Now, I went away from that really confused and a bit upset. And later on, I did ask her, why? Can you explain to me why you decided this? Because doing this is going to really make it tough on me now. And she said, well, that's life, isn't it? You made your choice. Now you got to live with it. Sink or swim. Remember? That's what she used to say. So I wasn't planning on sinking, but it was going to be tough. It meant that the babysitter was going to be with my baby a lot more than me. Okay, now Sundays, those were my days with my little baby boy. I had decided no boyfriends, nobody in the family, just me and my child. And I'd even make up a nice old dinner for me and give him whatever special foods he really liked. And while I fed him, I'd eat my dinner and I'd talk to him, and like he could understand. But he'd laugh and he'd for the most part, he'd be happy. He'd be happy because he was with his mommy. Okay? And realistically, I don't think I realized that he knew I was his mommy. He knew it. But I was too young and too naive to understand that. I really was. So Christmas came, and by then things were getting really tough on me financially. I mean, really tough. Getting him and I Christmas was not an easy task. It was a good thing I had so many brothers and sisters because a lot of stuff came from them. And then I had some friends that helped and give me a few things and didn't expect anything in return because they knew that I just simply couldn't afford it. So it was very good, I mean, it worked out about as good as it could be. It really did. Remember, going up that ladder. Now, if my memory serves me right, it was about right after Christmas that I knew by Christmas that trouble was coming. It was brewing. I already knew that. I knew we were in trouble. I knew that I didn't know what I was going to be able to pay and what I could pay. I knew there was a serious problem here. So, but I had one problem bigger than anything that got in the way. My pride. I wouldn't ask anybody for help. I didn't ask one person for help. Not one person. And I know for a fact that several people would have helped me. I know that. But see, that's where but I don't have any choice comes in. I was in that mode. I really was. I was resentful. I was actually very angry at that point at my mother. And it was being fueled by this new lady that I met at work, at my day job. She and I became friends. She was a lot older than me. I think her kids were already grown. And she wasn't like a second mother or anything. Nothing like that. But we talked. We talked at length. And she did ask me about his skin coloring, but she had seen my mother, so we had pictures of both of them together, and you can easily see why she figured he was dark because of the way my mother is. And now my mother today is not dark like that. I don't know what happened. She lost all her darkness, and it's really weird. In fact, she's almost really white, and I've never, ever seen her like that. But, she's got Alzheimer's today. And one of these days we're going to talk about that. Okay, so I'm going up the ladder. So I met this woman on this rung, and I'm crying to her. I mean, I'm crying. And I'm telling her I don't know what to do. I got my beautiful baby boy. I love him with all my heart and soul. And if I can't pay some of these bills, he and I are going to be in serious trouble. And so around through January, she starts talking to me. And she asked me, she said, have you considered giving him up for adoption? And I said, I did think about doing that while I was pregnant with him, but once I went through that horrible labor, and then when I saw him, that was it. That was it. It was too late. And then on top of that, he got sick, and he was in Children's Mercy for a week, and, I was so worried about him that, to me, I just couldn't do it. And I said, yes, I definitely thought about it. I'd planned on it. So then she said to me, well, I used to be a nurse, and I thought, wow, this is strange. I said, well, why in the world are you working in a factory? And she said, because, to be honest with you, I'm sick of doing nursing. I am sick of it. And she was unbelievably sick of it. And she told me a lot of stuff about, things you don't think about that nurses had to do back then. Okay? I think the nursing field and everything about it is totally different today. I really do. At least I hope it is. But anyway, getting on with it. So because of what she had been, she knew a lot of people. And she told me about a couple that had a 5-year-old girl, and they were seriously wanting to adopt a baby boy. And I said, well, what about him being so dark skinned? How are they going to feel about that? And she said, well, truthfully, they're pretty dark skinned themselves. And I'm getting late here, so I got to get this wound up, and I'm going to be doing another one too, real quick. So I'm climbing the rings, and this time I got a new rung of options. Okay, got some new options. I don't like them. I'm crying all the time. I'm in a state of depression that there was another time that I went into this kind of depression, but that was for a different reason. But I was in a pretty big depression because this little boy was everything to me. I was alive because of him. And that was the way I thought. But you know what? That is not a good way to think. It's not a good way to live. We don't live for our children. And I didn't know that then. To me, my child was the most important thing in the world back then. And that was all there was to it. But I also wanted my little boy to have everything he could possibly get that was good. Everything. Anything I could give him that was good, I wanted him to have. Anything. Okay, so she told me about these people because, of course, I had a lot of questions. They were Catholics. Well, I grew up a Catholic. In a way, I thought, okay, maybe going through the Catholic deal would be good for him. I really did. I mean, it didn't hurt me any, and I went to a Catholic school for 8 years, and actually, I made excellent grades when I got to high school, I never even studied. Everything was simple to me, okay? I mean it. There was only one class or two classes that I actually had some trouble in, and that it's almost funny on one of them, so one of these days I'll tell you about it. Okay, so anyway, I'm on a new rung now, and I'm feeling like I don't have much choice. That my only real choice would be to let these people take my baby. I mean, she was the one with the idea. And it was my idea to start with, actually. But I wanted to try to do it. This was my baby. Well, it took me a couple of weeks, at least. I had to think about this deeply. I didn't pray. I just had to think. Now, I always have called her one of the angels in my life, and I still think she was. Other people might not feel that way, but I do. I really do. I didn't prepare properly for this child, emotionally or anything else. And to live for a baby, that's not a really good idea. And that is going to show up in just a minute. I'm going to tell you what happened. Okay, let's get to the point. I decided that he would be better off with his family. So when he was 7, 8 months old, one Saturday I got all the special stuff together. They didn't need the crib. Of course they wouldn't. They had plenty of money. I kissed my baby. I held him. I rocked him. I sang to him. I said goodbye. And off they went. And I begged her to tell them not to change his first name. It was very important to me. I begged her to tell them. And she promised me she would. And then I wrote a little letter to him, and I asked her to please give it to them so that he would have it. All right, well, after that happened, that was a Saturday that she came over and got my baby. That was February. I mean, I had tried everything that I could think of. My 17-year-old brother even came to live with me for a while. And he didn't babysit during the day, but the night job, he would stay with Brian for me. But, my 17-year-old brother and I had gone through a lot together, believe me. We were pretty close there for a while. Our father had been pretty rough on us, so we'd been through quite a bit. Me and both my brothers, actually. Okay, so anyway, after a while, that didn't last long, so, okay, we tried that routine, that didn't work. So, I just felt like this was the best choice for my child. I wanted him to have a good life. And I only saw darkness in my life. I did not see any light. No light at the end of the tunnel. So I did not want my child to grow up like that. Not at all. So off they went. Well, I think that the rest of that weekend I just drank. Pretty sure I did. We could drink legally I could drink beer at that time. You had to be 20 and you could drink beer and wine. I think I bought a bunch of beer and drank that. I'd gotten used to drinking beer, but I didn't really like it, but I drank it. I just didn't care. And then that Monday came around, and for some reason, I think I might have called Mom and Dad and said, I have something very important that we need to talk about, and I'm going to be coming over. Well, so Mom didn't go into work, and I didn't go into work. I had to go by the courthouse and sign my child away. Do it official. Once you sign that, they say you can never get your child back. I think that's wrong though. I suspect that there are ways of doing it, and when I thought about doing it, he would have been about 10 years old, and I kept thinking, what are you, crazy? He should be secure in his family now. You can't just drag him out of it. But, it was 10 years later. I was on a new rung. I'd been through a whole bunch of other rungs. And so I always thought about trying to get him back. Always trying to figure it out. how I could do it. Okay, so my parents knew something was up. They knew it. And I went over there and we were all sitting down and I said, okay, I just signed the papers. I gave my son, uh, he is living with a new family now. And a whole bunch of people in my big, old, great big, huge family, and my parents, oh, everybody was mad at me. Oh my God. They just, oh, they were so mad. One of my aunts that I thought I was pretty close to, she just quit talking to me. So, but anyway, I was climbing the rungs. See, now let me tell you real quick what happened after that. Everything I was looking for was gone now. So I told everybody, and of course my parents, oh, one thing they said was, we would have taken them. And I thought, what? Or, wait a minute, you would have taken them? But yet you took my babysitters away. See, nothing they said made any sense. There were many times that they would say things that were so far out that it made you wonder, what are they really thinking, But anyway, that was life, all right? And I told them it was over with. And that's just the way it is. And I said, look, I want my child to have the very best life he can have. And I can't give it to him. At least I thought I couldn't give it to him. Believe me, I thought I couldn't. Okay, let me tell you real quick what happened for the next 2 years. After I left my parents, I quit my jobs, everything, totally quit. No longer worked. Didn't care. I had a drug buddy that I said, hey, I want to get together, let's do a bunch of PCP. Ever hear about that drug? Well, that's a pretty dangerous drug. I OD'd on it for a whole week. I have very low memory of that week. My whole reason for doing it was to die. He wanted to take me to the hospital, and I told him no, do not take me to any hospital. I mean, this is a druggy guy. I mean, he could have been in big trouble had he taken me in, but he was scared to death that I was going to die. But I didn't care, because everything I had to live for was gone. Everything. And my family hated me. So I felt like nobody loved me or cared about me. Well, later on, one of my brothers came back into my life, and he stayed with me for a while, and he said, Steph, we all love you. Even Mom and Dad love you. You need to just give them time. And he was very wise for a 17-year-old, but he and I drank together, frankly. I did not care for the next 2 years about much of anything. And I'll be honest with you, I did terrible things to myself. Absolutely terrible things. One of those boyfriends, I ended up living with them. And we did all kinds of different drugs, and I just didn't care. If they gave me something to put in my mouth, I put it in my mouth. I didn't even ask what it was. Who cared? That was my attitude. I was still climbing, You know, I might have been pretty stoned while I was doing it, but I was still climbing. These were lessons. These were my lessons in life, okay? But I had to learn something about having children, and boy, did that teach me about what it really meant to have a child. Okay, I'm going to let you go for now, but remember that ladder. Think about that, because that's a good way of thinking about how we learn and the way we learn through life spiritually. And I'm going to talk a little bit more a little bit later about something else. I love y'all. Talk to you soon.